Good evening. Welcome to another presentation here in the Issues Room. This is our 122nd edition here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and the Issues Room page. We're also found on LinkedIn. So we'd like to welcome you to this edition. A very powerful conversation will be kept here tonight. And I'm encouraging you to share the link, invite someone like us, follow us, love us, whatever it is. We're here Tuesdays and Fridays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and midnight in the Greenwich time zone, particularly Liberia, where uh, we hope our broadcast is gaining grounds. Wherever you are, we say welcome, welcome, welcome. Share the link. Uh, you know, this is a conversation that we want to hold, and this is important to Liberia at this time, looking at the elections on the horizon, our national elections for president and other office will be held on October 10th this year. And right now, we got to hold such conversations on how our election is going to turn out. And tonight we'll be looking at the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations, if they were today, as I speak to you, put it into full swing, what impact would it have on the elections? How consequential is it going to be? And we will have in studio guests, former Commissioner Massa Washington will be joining us momentarily here to discuss these recommendations and what it could have done for Liberia even prior to now. And if we were to put it in action, it really make a difference. In the meantime, let me go over to Moses Dogba Sandy, who is out there in Newcastle, Delaware. Good evening, Moses. Welcome to this 122nd edition. We're here in the Issues Room, the alternative social media platform where we discuss the things that matter, the things that matter to our country, Liberia, to the African continent, and the Black diaspora. Welcome.
Thank you, Volcano. Um, it is always pleasing to team up with you in the issues room. That is why the people call us the alternative. When you have nowhere to go, the issues room is the place to be because we discuss the issues objectively, the contemporary issues objectively. So I would like to join you in welcoming our many viewers globally to this very important discussion tonight, looking at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendation put forth for a better and stable Liberia. Thank you
Thank you.
again for the opportunity of looking at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we always got to play with time, and time is not always in our favor. So we have a lot of stuff to cover. Uh, and I think that since we have the commissioner in studios, we'd like to invite her to the platform for the first time to share with us, in trending news before we begin the conversation. Masa is no stranger. In fact, Masa is a founding member of the
Of
issues
the
room.
issues room,
She's on
yeah.
sabbatical. Times. Listen, this thing is a serious matter. It's not ordinary, and it takes a
Yeah,
lot of energy. And Masa,
a lot.
who has a teenager son, I believe you got to make sure that he's situated and all of that. I have I have kids to take care of. You, Moses, it's a lot of work,
It's a
and
lot.
it's good to see you again, Masa. Welcome to your home. You're always welcome. So whenever you have the time, we're always here. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Volcano Moses. Thank you guys very much for this heartfelt welcome. I know I'm not the prodigal daughter,
Of course,
No,
you're
you're
not.
not. You're not.
so I'm not the prodigal daughter coming home.
Yeah.
As you know, Volcano, like you rightly stated,
Yeah.
America is a very busy place, and when you are a single mother, a professional, and trying to do everything, it can be sometimes overwhelming. So I would love to like be current, but most of the time, you really don't have the time. And so thank you for welcoming back home. It's always good to be back home. We've come a full circle. So the issue room will always be, that place where people will feel comfortable because I'm one of you guys. I mean, we are professional journalists. We were trained, we were educated, we know the issues, we have been tested and proven in terms of our track record, our credibility. So the issue room actually has what it takes to lead the Liberian narrative. And so, I will always give you guys my blessing. And whenever I have the time, I may give you a call and say, hey, let's do this show or whatsoever. But for now, I think the issue room is in capable hands with you gentlemen. And so
Sure.
it's really good to be back, honestly.
Thank
thank
you.
you, Master. And
Welcome, Maza.
honestly, we missed you, and a lot of folks have always asked, and we said when Master is ready, she'll come back. And so here you are. That dispels any kind of hearsay and rumors that will have, because people quick to run with perception.
Yeah.
But again, it's good to have you. I'd like to welcome Willie Bedell. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you can share the link, invite some of the folks in your friend circle to be here with us tonight. We're asking all of you out there to come in, let us know you're here. You wanted to hear from Masa. Masa is here, so it's going to be a powerful conversation as the TRC recommendations relate to our national elections coming up. So before we do that, Moses, the chaplain of the national legislature, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure if it's for the
Yeah,
Senate
he's
or
Chaplain
for the
General
House.
of the Liberian Senate.
Okay, so they got two chaplains now. They got
Yeah, the
chaplain
House
for the
has
House.
its own, and then
Oh, okay,
yeah,
they got chaplain for the Senate.
yeah.
All right. So the chaplain, the man took to the microphone and tried to impress the senators. And he was not definitive in terms of, but anyone, we Liberian people, we can pick up on innuendos. We know when somebody talking to us. You ain't even gotta tell me, say you talking to me. I know when you're talking to me. And
Yeah.
the man went and threw a jab at the vice president because he can tell me, say it was not the vice president he was talking about. But let's play it so that people don't say we putting words in his mouth. Like Diego
And then
Colubac can say that, are you
let's
talking for me?
quickly,
you know.
Volcano. Don't forget to mention his name. He's
Go ahead, name it.
Reverend Michael Holders. I don't know
Michael
whether he
Holder.
even deserved the title Reverend.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So Reverend Michael Holder, who is the current chaplain in the National Senate, in the legislature, took to the microphone before his prayer. He went on to prophesy that he has had series of dreams, and he went on to interpret his own dream. So we want to bring him in so you can hear from him as he speaks, and then we can go from there to have this quick discussion. So Moses, is unfortunate. This man who God has blessed, but has rather continued to act poor. This man who was in authority for 12 years, and he acted mean to himself. I don't want to be like this man. So he as a solid Christian who should have gone to the seminary, all right, he's
Mhm.
acting like the Pharisee. He thinks that he's so religious that he's pointing finger, and he uses the same phrase that the Pharisees used. I don't want to be like that person over there. He stands there on the podium and glorify himself, acting as though he's giving God the praises for what God has done for him. But this man he's referencing is former Vice President Boaka. You can see on the faces of Yumbly, of Darius DeLong, but you can see the other people who are celebrating what he's saying
Even the
in the
pro
chat.
tem himself was smiling.
They were smiling,
Yeah,
and they even closed eyes to his prayer, which is very deceitful.
yeah.
He has a scorn. He shouldn't even be considered irreverent. And I'm seeing it as a person who has a relationship with God, because you don't go praying and saying, I don't want to be like this person. You should be praying for that person. You should be asking God for grace upon that person. It is a shame. This tells you how far our country has come and is going. And this tells you that people like this or like these should not continue to be at the helm of leadership in our country. This is evil. He's not a pastor, he's not a reverend. Michael Holder is not. He's not. He's a pretense. And he's doing this only because he gaining favor. What did you say? The pro tem boy of vehicle.
Oh yeah.
So go ahead, Moses.
You know,
Before you start, let me just add in
yeah.
Alfonso so he can join us on this trending news. Alfonso, welcome. Your microphone is muted, and your background is a little too dark. So I don't know if I can put you back where you can get a little bit of lighting, so you're more clearer. Will you turn some more lights on, and I'll bring
It's
you back?
certainly okay. All right.
All right,
Yeah.
go ahead, Moses.
Yeah, look, Volcano, I am not a theologian, but I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. And one thing I learned over the year, I'm sure you, Masa, will agree with me on that. The purpose of the church is to reconcile, propagate the messages of peace and reconciliation, bring people together. That's why religious leaders in our community are considered the conscience of society. They don't divide. Volcano, when I saw this so-called chaplain general referring to himself as Reverend Michael Holders, I was appalled. I was disappointed. Not only I was appalled that he's a quote-unquote religious leader denigrating a former official, a senior official of the Salif administration.
But not only that, this was the man who held the gavel in the Senate,
Yeah,
the chairman of the Senate, the vice
yeah,
president.
president of the Senate for 12 years. And this man publicly shaming the former vice president for no justifiable reason. He comes and say he had a dream, a political dream to shame someone for no reason. And one thing that is in error here is that this man is being paid by taxpayers of Liberia. He's a civil servant. The legislature is owned by the people of Liberia. It's not a place for division. It's a place of neutrality. Because when you are in there, you work for the people of Liberia. You consolidate the peace. When you speak, you put national interest first. But this man is being paid by taxpayers of Liberia. And you took to the podium under the guise of offering prayer for the senators as a return for the commencement of the 54th section of the legislature to shame a former vice president.
All right, let's hear from Massa and let's hear
Liberia is in peril. Let me wrap it by saying that our country is in peril. And please, I'm appealing to people of conscience. The pro tem has already demonstrated his that he's compromised because he was literally celebrating as the man was denigrating the former vice president. That man should be out of the Senate. He doesn't deserve the taxpayers' money. So let me stop there.
Massa.
I mean, absolutely, Moses and Volcano, I do agree with your initial observation on this so-called man of God's behavior, which I think it does not augur well for the fragile peace that is obtained in Liberia as a nation. And it is actually ridiculous. It is ridiculous um, to see people actually denigrate the House of Representatives in our parliament. Our parliament should be a sacred place, a place where serious people go every day to do serious business, to do the Liberian people business, to work in the interests of Liberians. A place where people should actually be pushing and looking and working towards bipartisan support of legislation that will help the Liberian people. So to see this dude calling himself a man of God,
I like how you call him a dude.
yeah,
That's a dude behavior.
yeah, calling himself a man of God, standing there and denigrating not only the former vice president of the Republic of Liberia, but an elder and a statesperson. And so culturally, it is frowned upon. We come from a culture where we respect our elders. We're supposed to respect our elders. And then secondly, the person that he's disrespecting and denigrating, actually, I would say trying to denigrate, because as far as I'm concerned, what he's done is he's actually exposed himself and he's disgraced himself. So as far as I'm concerned, he has not denigrated the person of the former vice president. So you will have someone like this stand in the parliament where you have the Senate pro tem and all these quote unquote important representatives, senators who are supposed to be actually representing the people of Liberia and who's supposed to be pushing this reconciliation all the time, pushing to consolidate the peace, to maintain the peace. And some of them are actually sitting and cheering, and,
Yeah.
and the thing is right. This is so wrong. And then of course, this is a place where, like I stated before, you have different political parties representing different constituency of the Liberian people. So this is a place where you don't want to gaslight and ignite any discontentment, because it is not right. So you have other senators, like for example, you just mentioned Senator Kanga Lawrence, you mentioned Senator Dillon, and they are allies of the vice president. So they're sitting there, and this buffoon, I'm sorry if maybe I'm not allowed to
You're
use
right. Yeah, you're right, Massa. Go
they're
ahead.
sitting there, and this dude is actually disrespecting the vice president, who is actually one of their senior allies. So what do you think the atmosphere is going to be moving forward for these senators who are sitting there, and the one of their senior political ally is being disrespected? So when he disrespect Boycott the way he's done, he's also disrespecting Senator Kanga Lawrence, Senator Dillon, and other allies of the vice president in the House. And then never mind that Boycott was actually president of the Liberian Senate when he was there, and this dude probably worked under his administration. So to see a
Or
miscellaneous,
maybe he's one of those CDC arrangement chaplain.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but to see this miscellaneous, or do, be so
I
brave,
like your adjective, Massa.
so brave to take on the vice president, and it's just what it says. It speaks for the level of deprivation of our country in every sphere and aspect of governance. That's what it speaks to, because I've never seen a situation before where you will have someone like this be so brave and emboldened to actually take to the platform, the podium, or whatever, and to heap insult on an elderly statesperson, a former vice president of the republic. It is unprecedented. But of course, that's what you have. People
Let's
always
hear
say,
from Alfonso quick. Alfonso, you're muted.
Yeah, yeah, no. So yeah, I didn't want whatever to interrupt. That's why I muted myself.
No, no, it's good.
Um, yeah, you said Masa said the last word she used that is unprecedented. A lot of stuff going on in Liberia is unprecedented, and that's the reason why we have these unprecedented things, unfortunately, like going on. I did not hear. Unfortunately, I joined. I didn't join when you guys were on, so I didn't hear that particular prayer. But just gauging from what you have said, here's what I'll say to that. There's no prayer in the world that should be used to insult or to denigrate or to demean anybody. That's not a prayer. Whether you're Muslim or Christian or Buddhist, we are all taught to pray in a way that elevates people, in a way that shows God's love for other human beings, not to use the podium, not to use the pulpit through a prayer to denigrate anybody. But I always would like to look at the bigger picture. So what that does, the fact that somebody, a chaplain in a national legislature, will take to the pulpit or to the podium to pray, and in his prayer decide to insult and to denigrate people, really is a reflection of what is going on in Liberia. It's a reflection of what's going on in the entire administration and a reflection of what's going on in the legislature as well. We see political opposition as enmity. If somebody disagrees with us, he or she is an enemy that we need to destroy using every means. And of course, this man, I don't want to say gentleman, has chosen to use prayer as a weapon. That basically tells us where our country, the depths to which our country has sunk, and unfortunately, the depths to which we continue to sink as a nation and a people. If people, I mean, we see people now taking arms and guns and cutlasses and stones and stoning people who, or even flogging people mercilessly who are just demonstrating peacefully. And unfortunately, it's creeping into our churches and into and on our pulpits, where we're also using God or the name of God to really attack people who we see as political opponents, and that's dangerous. That's extremely
Thank you.
dangerous.
Thank you. Well, if you just joining us, we're going 725. The conversation here tonight is about the TRC and its recommendation and how it could be, uh, if it were applied as we speak today, what impact it will have on our national elections. We'd like to welcome Hinksin Tamba, Flomo Livingstone. Thanks for joining us. Forger Monyu, Emmanuel Jackson, and Mapu Hall. We ask Thomas Awaji, where are you tonight? Rivers says, Bro, your girl Masa is back in studio, so you got to call us some kind of way. You got to find a way to join us.
Yeah.
Uh, we are Doe and Raymond Clark. All of you guys, we're hoping that you will chime in tonight. We want the numbers to go up because this conversation is critical. It's very, very critical. Let me just join. Rather pass it on to Masa to give us a quick synopsis of the TRC and what it did. Let us not span on it because we want to delve into more, but just so people who are listening will understand what the Truth and Reconciliation was and why was it established and what did it accomplish, and the recommendation will come to that. But let's just go quickly since you're one of the commissioners or former commissioners.
thank you for Kano. So we know by now that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Liberia was one of several um, credibility and integrity institutions or organizations that were proposed at the 2005 Accra Comprehensive Peace Agreement that finally brokered the peace, had an interim government of Mr. Judy Bryan, and then usher in the elected government of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and then the Governors Commission, the Human Rights Commission, the Land Commission, and then the TRC of Liberia. So the TRC was established against the backdrop of transitional justice. And transitional justice is a process where usually countries coming out of conflict, the nature of the Liberian conflict that we saw. So they try to address when antecedents to the conflict, what happened during the conflict, and then how to move forward as a nation. So, but basically, there are several forms of transitional justice. So the TRC is just one form of transitional justice. You have a war crimes code, and you have other processes. So they as part of like I said, as part of post-conflict Liberia and trying to consolidate the peace and reconciliation, the TRC Act was legislated by the National Legislature of Liberia at the time. And interestingly, that legislature had as speaker Mr. George Dwyer. And Mr. George Dwyer is infamous for being, I term him the butcher of Monrovia. He was the one he had a death squad, and he did a lot of notorious things. He's dead now. And so George Dwyer was Speaker of the Parliament when the TRC Act was passed. This is my copy of the TRC Act. This is how it looks. The original TRC Act, this is how it looks. So the TRC Act was passed on June 10, 2005. It was approved June 10, 2005. And by June 22nd, 2005, it was printed into a handbill by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it became law. And in the TRC Act, it basically is the TRC Act is also the mandate of how the commission will operate, how commissioners will, how they will select commissioners, the vetting process, administration, and then also those different, powers that the commission will have and what have you. So the TRC commenced work in 2006. And by 2009, we had had our hearings. We had more than 750 hearings all over Liberia in every 15 county of Liberia. And the Liberian TRC was the first TRC to introduce a diaspora project, because we felt that the war came from the war was exported, it came from the diaspora, mainly the United States, to Liberia. And then also during the conflict, many Liberians, victims as well as some perpetrators, fled to the, in the diaspora, whether in the sub-region or the United States or parts of Europe. So we felt that our situation was a little bit unique because we had this large population of Liberians who were now in the diaspora, and we felt that we needed them to be part of the peace process, but we also needed to hear their stories. We needed to know what happened to them, why they did what, and we also needed their own proposal for recommendations as to how to consolidate the peace and move Liberia forward. So the TRC had a diaspora project, and I happen to have been chairperson of that diaspora project. It was very successful. So we know the TRC, they had this hearing, they had this statement taking. We had several categories of hearings. The hearings was compartmentalized. We had hearings for alleged perpetrators. We had hearings for victims. We had hearings for women, hearings for children. We had hearings for political actors. We had hearings even for the progressive era, Dr. Sawyer and the rest of them were the progressive. We had hearings for the progressive era. We had hearings, all sort of hearings.
For the war laws themselves, right? For the war laws too.
Yeah. We had, so the war laws hearing was under the alleged perpetrators hearings. So under the alleged perpetrators hearing, that's where we invited, people who allegedly, committed or perpetrated violence against other people. So they included war laws, rebel generals, former child soldiers, and what have you. So we went through all that process. And then the TRC Act says, after all those different processes, the commission should then do a comprehensive report that is compile all of its work into a comprehensive report and present to the Republic of Liberia through the government, the president's office. But it taught us specifically what we needed to be looking at in terms of recommendations. And one of the recommendations that the TRC Act proposed that we consider was recommendations for accountability. Accountability for war crimes, gross violations of human rights, and also accountability for political, political accountability, meaning that those who politically either fueled the conflict, either kept the conflict going, or helped to exacerbate the conflict. So these people may not have been warlords on the battlefront, but they were like the puppet masters behind the string. So this is where the TRC came in with the sanction list. So the sanction list was the accountability list for those who we felt bore that political responsibility for what had happened in Liberia. And then, of course, we have recommendations for prosecution in different categories. So let me just say very quickly. So the TRC came out with 47 broad recommendations. And then those 47 recommendations were subcategorized into 207 recommendations. And 57 of those recommendations were asking the Liberian people to investigate these individuals and institutions further because we didn't have the time to complete their own investigation. But we felt that their own liability was so great, so we want further investigation, to take place with these individuals. So there was 57 of such individuals. Then, of course, we had an economic crimes component of the TRC work. And so under the economic crimes recommendations, we are recommending that 19 corporations be further be further investigated for their own role that they play in economic crimes. Because during the war, one of the reasons why the war lasted so long, 14 to 16 years, is because major warring factions that had access to the natural resources were actually using the natural resources not to make life easier for the Liberian citizens, that were caught up in the area, but they were using it to fuel the war and to keep the war going. Like, for example, they were like the NPFL. They were exporting logs. They were exporting extractive commodities like the gold and and those kinds of things. So we recommended that those 19 corporations be investigated further for the role they play in the war. And 21 individuals we are recommending for economic crimes, because also during our work, we were able to establish that economic crime is a catalyst for war crimes. And in the case of Liberia, economic crimes was actually a catalyst for war crime, because some people were using forced labor. Like, for example, when I was in Paris in October, I served as an expert witness in the trial of Kondi Kamara, who was tried and convicted. He was the guy who was one of the commanders of Ulimoke in Foya Lofa County, and they did all sort of unspeakable things. And one of the things they did was forced labor. So they abused the rights of people. They had people actually walking those hundreds of miles from Foya with looted things on their head and taking it to the Guinean border to sell for them. And so it was economic crimes they were engaging in, but then it turned into war crimes because they were using forced labor. And some people died along the way. And some people who were not strong enough to make the trek to the Guinean border and back, they were killed because, they were not strong enough. So economic crime has been established as a catalyst for war crimes. So we have 21 individuals who have been recommended for economic crimes. And then, of course, we have 98 individuals that the TRC found to be liable. We consider those people as bearing the greatest responsibility for the gross violations of human rights that took place in Liberia. And amongst these 98 people are warlords, people like the Prince Johnson and the different heads of warring factions, some of the members of the command chain, and of course some of those guys who were taking instruction, but they were so notorious. Some of them were crucifying people alive, opening pregnant with wisdom and stuff like that. So it's 98 of them we recommended for the war crimes court. And then, of course, we have 50 people on the sanction list. And the sanction list ended up being the most talked about list because former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is named on the sanction list. The sanction list, like I said earlier, is actually the political accountability list. So the President Sirleaf is on the sanction list, and and we have another 84 people that are recommended for criminal prosecution for gross human rights violations, but we are asking for them to actually go to domestic court. So we're going to have the war crime trials, and then there are some individuals that we feel that domestically our laws and our court can hinder. So they also did some bad things, but they can be filtered through domestic court, or if the war crimes court is going to uh when it happens, and if it does happen, if the war crimes court is going to operate long enough, I guess all these people can just go through there. And so that's where we are with the TRS process, in order that I try to, give
Yeah.
a synopsis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think it was a good overview, and it brings us to the recommendations and all of that. And I believe that what you said, uh, with all of these, different people from 21 to 98 to 50 to 84 in different categories, be it the economic crime, the perpetrator, the political group that have the sanctions. But let's come to understand, and before Moses delve in, I'm sure I saw him jotting some stuff down. Let's come to understand where we are right now are some of those major players, and you can clearly say it because you know it. You know the document is right in your hand. Those names are in there. Are some of those major players still around, and they have their hands in our political climate?
Yes, of course. We still have major warlords who are actually in public office. Some of them, sadly, were voted by the local people. You see, what we realized that happened after the war is that, because Liberians, we missed the boat, we missed the mark. We were in a hurry to do a quick solution thing. And I guess because our war was kind of protracted, and it just kept getting crazier and crazier. The Liberian Civil War is the first war that I know, and I'm not an expert on wars, but it's the first war that I know that had about 7, 8 different warring factions. Because besides some of those major warring factions that people know, like the NPFL, the RNPFL, the LPC, the Ulimo K, Ulimo G, and all of that, when the TRC investigated, we found out that there were other, they had a group called Bandy, they had this other group, it was just completely crazy. So the Liberian Civil War produced more than 8 warring factions. Again, unprecedented. So I guess the international community was getting tired with Liberia, and everybody wanted to just end this war. So people made a lot of concessions. And every time they made, those concessions, the Liberian people were the biggest losers all the time. And those concessions, some of those concessions, don't forget they had a different council of state. I think they had a 3 council of state where they had all warlords. First, they had representatives of warlords on the council of state. Then they had warlords themselves on the council of state. And then they had this power sharing government where they had the proportional representation in the parliament, where warring factions were sending, nobody was
People to represent, yeah.
warring faction was sending a representative to the parliament and stuff like that. So that's how our governance system became bastardized. I mean, if I may use that word. And so we didn't start our peace process properly. We missed the boat. We started doing all the wrong things. We appeased perpetrators so much, we bent back over so much for perpetrator. And one of the reasons too was that there were some politicians and some, political gurus who were behind the scene crossing deal with these guys. It was all about job. People were kind of thinking, well, these guys are getting the lion's share of the country, so let's try and appease them so that we can get our jobs. So a lot of things happened, and we completely, Liberia was like a hot cake coming out of the oven immediately after war, and people just drop it, and it just shattered.
So
So
in
that's
a nutshell, we still have
typical, because perpetrators, warlords, I mean, people who committed heinous crimes are today some of our local leaders. They are today presiding over the very victims. They are today the millionaires. They are the rich people, and the victims are poor, and they're suffering. So it's sad the way we went about, resolving our war issue, and trying to establish a semblance of governance immediately following our war. We did it wrong.
What's this?
Yeah, let me begin by saying thank you, Tomas, for the insight provided regarding the work of the TLC, the recommendations. Our topic is how the failure to adhere to the recommendations of the TLC report could impact the outcome of the 2023 election, or how that could affect the general presidential elections in Liberia. Now, if you look around us, like you said, Masa, you look in the Senate, you have a representation. Let me not even say the Senate, but you look in the national legislature, you have a representation of people who actively participated in the willful murder and destruction of human lives in Liberia. People who participated in the looting of the nation's resources, and those people were never held accountable. What did our people do? They went to the poll and they said, "You kill my mom, you kill my pa, I will vote for you." That's why sometimes when you talk to people who are not Liberians, and they tell you that Liberia is just a weird society, because people do things that makes you to ask, do they really understand what they do? Because how was someone who murdered your mom or dad or uncle, and you go and vote for the same person for political, power? So now, what I'm saying, yeah, Prince Johnson, one of the notorious war criminals in Liberia, is contesting in Nimba. He wants to go for third term. So if he's elected, he may be spending 27 years in the Senate. Because every time he wins, it's 9 years. You see how Liberia is? 27 years. If this guy is re-elected in October, he will spend 27 years. A notable war criminal. The man will destroy the lives of Liberians with impunity. We have Yake Koluba. He's also in the House of Representatives. And Yake Koluba himself has come public there to say, hey, I participated in the war. But Yake Koluba was elected representative. Yeke Koluba is also what? Going for election this year. George Boley, I'm not sure whether he's going for re-election, but George Boley also headed one of the most notable warring factions in Liberia. He's in the legislature. What happens, Masa? And I would like to put this question to you, Alfonso, because you were the information officer of the TRC. If if Senator Johnson is re-elected, Yaka Koluba re-elected, and others were financed, it is alleged that even President George Weah, behind the scene, provided financial support for the continuation of the civil war. He supported a particular warring faction. It is being alleged. I don't know how credible that information is. But if George Weah is, let's assume that he actually did that. If Mr. Weah is re-elected, Prince Johnson, Yeke Koluba, and the others who contributed to the destruction of thousands of human lives in Liberia. If these people are re-elected Alfonso, what message will Liberia be conveying to the world? Let me put that to you.
Thank you. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think we've already conveyed that message many, many times. We've re-elected these people several times, so we've already, unfortunately, conveyed that message. I think our failure to implement the recommendations of the TRC has really laid a foundation of lawlessness and impunity in Liberia. So what we see today, the level of corruption that people are carrying on today, people attacking others in the streets because they disagree with them, is a function, is a predicate of our failure as a nation and a people to hold warlords accountable. And worst of all, to actually reward them for the crimes that they've committed. That's exactly what we've done for, I would say, for several years. Massa kind of alluded to it. During the Civil War, and I wouldn't say Liberians, but because the initial recommendation by the Liberia Council of Churches as to how Liberia Chief Peace did not include anything about appeasement. It was actually about holding warlords accountable. So our peace brokers, ECOWAS, the United Nations, and everybody else who were involved in the peace process, unfortunately chose the path of appeasement. How do we end the Liberian Civil War? Let's appease the warlords. What do they want? They want political power. They want money. So what do? Let's give them jobs in government. Like give them authority to be on the Council of State, to appoint people in the warring factions. That's one of the reasons why we have several warring factions in the country, because people now saw that the way to extend to political power and wealth in Liberia was to form a warring faction, and then you will participate in the peace process and you will get a piece of the cake, which was government positions, government vehicles, access to public resources. So we had several people forming warring factions. That continued to the point where even, yeah, 13, 13 warring factions, if not even more. Thank you. So we had all of these warring factions, a lot of local defense foes, whatever it is. Some of them were coming on the scene because they wanted a piece of the pie, and they did get a piece of the pie. So they have ministries assigned to them, etc. They will also control a piece of territory and will be allowed to dig gold and diamond, whatever the case may be. The extension of that appeasement policy, the extension of that impunity policy continues today and even into government. Now, what do we do? In addition to them killing people, we empower them with the economic means, so they were able to run campaigns, political campaigns, and win their political campaigns and become senators and stuff. Now, pray tell me, you have somebody who was raping and butchering and murdering people as senator or representative, being paid with the taxpayers' money, driving a big, huge car. Will this person hold somebody accountable who goes and steals 50,000 or 25,000 from government coffers? No. It's an extension. What's happening today is an extension of the culture of impunity that we have created in Liberia. So, to answer your question directly, if these people are elected, the system will continue, and I can tell you it will be worse, because after a while, here's what happens in human societies. When people get suppressed for a while, over time they resist. I mean, that's part of our
Yeah,
history,
that's
right?
true. Yeah, that's true.
That's
Yeah.
a part of our history. Why did we have a civil war? People got tired. First of all, why did we have the coup? We had a coup because after the coup, what did the people say? They jubilated in the streets because they were tired of being suppressed. When we had a civil war, what did Liberians do? They were tired of being suppressed and abused, so they also jubilated. They ran towards the warring factions. So everybody joined the warring factions. If we do not arrest this situation and arrest it soon, I'm afraid our fragile peace is being significantly undermined, and we might fall back to where we do not want to get to. And that's why I think it's really important. That's why some of us have been campaigning internationally and also locally to have a process where these people are held accountable and removed from the political space because they're occupying the political space and because they have the resources that we've given to them over time. It's very difficult for anybody else to really penetrate. So even our democracy is impacted by that. These people get $60,000 every 3 months from the national legislature, and they go to their constituencies and buy zinc for people and pay a few kids tuition. If you go to campaign against one of these people, Moses, you you don't have a chance.
You are not winning, my man.
Precisely. So our economy, our democracy is hijacked. So we should not expect any good leadership until these people are removed from the scene.
Yeah.
I'd like to say this. So then, where does the pressure comes? Because when you think about where we are, and the Americans have demonstrated time immemorial that when we don't speak for ourselves, they step in. But then you have a group of people here who are still, you know, other people meddling in our business. But the ordinary people who really want to do something about their livelihood don't have the power. They don't have the guts to come together, right? So a few good people are still in Liberia who don't like what the current arrangement is. But then you have a group that is in the mass that enjoying this. They're not benefiting. I saw someone was giving, I think it was Costa, who said the people you're voting for, the people you run in the streets for, either go home in the night and they sleep in the air conditioner rooms. They're watching satellite TV. They got refrigerator with cold water and good food and generator at night, and you're the one, the mosquito. So you're using jack o' lantern, and then when you wake up the next day, you come back in the street. What do you carry home?
Sequoia.
What do you carry home? So where does the pressure come from to help save Liberia?
Or maybe
Because it
carry
seems as
Sequoia
though
home.
what both of you are saying, we will not be able to save ourselves. And no matter how much we talk here in the issues room, no matter how much of the enlightenment we put forth, it's not going to even awaken some people. And because the group is in the majority who are enjoying this current arrangement, and it's not good for the country's future. So where does the pressure come? Who can help us?
So I'm assuming you're asking a question, or also it could be
That's yeah,
rhetorical.
that's a
Yeah.
question.
But let me tell you where the pressure will come from. I think the pressure must come from us, the Liberian people. As difficult as it sounds, I think it's possible. And I tell you it's possible because we got the international Liberian civil society movement and organization, got the international community to the point of accepting ATRC. We were not going to get anything at all. We led massive campaigns at home and abroad to insist that a system of accountability was necessary. We were pushing for war crimes. Of course, we got a TRC that also included a provision, as Massa correctly said, that they could make recommendations for people to be held accountable. So it is possible through our advocates would never get everybody in Liberia to agree with us to fight for this process. Because Volcano and Moses, as you said, there are a lot of people who are benefiting from this process. So they're not going to fight at the process that they're benefiting from. So we who believe otherwise are the ones who have to fight. I know, I remember very well when a U.S. ambassador issued a statement recently through when they instituted
The,
a
the
sanction. It
sanction.
said something. We can only do so much, but you, the Liberian people, will have to be the ones who rise up and change the system. You, the Liberian people, will have to be the ones who do the groundwork. They're helping us. So the signaling to us, they are saying, we'll help you if you're willing to help yourself. In fact, we'll start the ball rolling. We'll sanction these people. We'll see some of their resources. Now, Liberians, what are you prepared to do?
And then this is what they prepare to do:
Yeah.
run the streets and say that they will put Nathaniel McGill in the Senate,
Yeah.
and they're there in the numbers, and
Yeah.
even some of the elders in the county are
Yeah.
already declaring him to be a senator. So
Mhm.
then, who stops that? The
Uh,
Elections Commission?
no, the election commission cannot stop that. It's
Oh
the
God!
the voters of my Gibby can stop that. So maybe what do we do? What does civil society do? So maybe there's one way, the multiple ways. Let me just suggest one way. Human rights organizations, Justice and Peace Commission that I work for led the way. We went to court, we issued several writs. We wrote international people who travel around advocating. Here's Nathaniel McGill who's sanctioned, who's accused of corruption. Maybe where we can begin is that the Liberia Bar Association, the Press Union of Liberia, civil society organizations and individuals can probably take the government of Liberia to court right now and say you are not implementing your responsibilities. These people are accused of eating our money, taxpayers' resources. Can you investigate and arrest them and prosecute them and take the resources from them? Americans will not come and do it for us. They will sanction these people and then they will leave the rest to us.
And I want clarity here. I know I want clarity here. When you say
Mhm.
to court, you
Yeah.
mean the Temple of Justice that is also compromised, or the
so,
international court? Where are we going to court?
so there are two ways. So as a human
You can
rights
start
and social
locally.
justice advocate, here is what I do.
Mhm.
When I encourage people to go to court, and when we go to court, I do not we do not always go to court because the judge will rule in our favor. We don't even expect the corrupt judges usually to rule in our favor. We go to court to create public outcry. We
Right.
go to court to embarrass the government, to expose the corruption in government. So people see that even the judiciary is corrupt and they cannot get justice. And force people to do their job, or if they do not do their job, we expose them to public outcry. As advocates, that's one of the things we try to accomplish when we take the legal action. It's not always to win in court, but that can create backlash. That can create embarrassment to the point that even the election commission or even the justice ministry or whatever might indict or might say, hey, you do not qualify to run because you have this legal case or whatever against you or whatever the case may be. So yes, that's just one way we can do. Of course, there are other ways, such as go to MyGivi, descend on MyGivi, support a more credible candidate, and educate the people, and lead them to vote against this man. That's another way to do it. Of course, there's the international aspect of it. After America imposed the sanctions, what's happening? In the sanction document, they said anybody who does business with these people. What are we as Liberian individuals and civil society organizations doing to ensure that that aspect is implemented? So, if you know somebody who my girl is doing business with, are you prepared and willing to expose that person and the business they're doing so they are also held accountable? These are things that we as Liberian individuals can do. So we're holding the Liberian government's feet to the fire, but we're also holding the US government's feet to the fire to implement what it said it will implement and providing them information. So there are multiple things that we can do. Unfortunately, the US is not going to descend in Liberia and arrest these people and bring them and prosecute or tell people don't vote for these people. They won't do that. They would just sanction these people. They would take several different actions against them, but we have to take it to the logical conclusion.
Thank you. It's 8 o'clock here in the city. We're broadcasting live from Philadelphia and Newcastle simultaneously. We have former Commissioner Massa Washington of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of the Liberian people, put it that way. Mr. Alfonso Yuna, a former Liberian journalist and a human rights and social justice advocate here on the show tonight. We would like to welcome all of you. I see Sandro B. Johnson in the house. Good to have you. Thomas Awaji, thank you so much for spreading the word out. Mapu Hall, Willie Bidell, good to see you. Maurice Kasama, Aaron Kofa Chie, and all of you guys. We'll be opening the line at some point, But this conversation is about the recommendations made by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission after it had gathered all of the information needed and what they could put forth if implemented, how much change it could have brought our country. Today, that recommendation still sit there, dead, not alive. It's probably on life support. It's not yet buried. Some of the politicians are saying, if you vote me into power, day one, I will implement. We're hearing that coming from some of the politicians. George Weah even said it. And then he comes there and he folds his hand. Moses.
Yeah. I would like to say this, like Massa right there summarized for us. The TRC did a very remarkable job. They clearly gave us a roadmap to a peaceful and stable Liberia. They say, hey, hold people accountable. People who committed economic crimes, they recommended that a certain people, institutions be sanctioned. Those who undermine the peace process, the commission also recommended that a good number of them be barred from participating in Liberia's political system. And the prescriptions are just too many for the way forward. Look, if we can have a government with the support of the international community that will commit not even 100% of the TRC recommendation, just a segment, the key ones. He said, hey, Mr. Johnson, your name is on the TRC or it's in the recommendation. You undermine Liberia's peace. Unfortunately, you are not a good candidate. We cannot allow you to participate in this process. Because when you allow Mr. Johnson, Mr. Yeke Koluba, and all of those guys who undermines Liberian peace, will kill people for no justifiable reason, that equates to what we call in behavior modification, reinforcing negative behavior when you don't hold people accountable. And that's what today in Liberia, people commit crimes and they just walk away because nobody is holding anybody accountable. The police is corrupt. The judges are corrupt. The schools are corrupt. The churches are corrupt. All over Ukraine, no one holds anybody accountable. The way forward, as proposed by the TRC, I'm sure Massa can speak to that, just enforce what the recommendations are. I can tell you, Liberia will make progress. Get these people off the stage. And let me give it to Massa. You are muted.
No, sorry, I got it. I got it. Go ahead,
Oh,
Master.
okay.
Thank you, Moses. So
Yeah.
absolutely, Moses, you are on point. When you say Liberians just need to implement the recommendations, enforce the recommendations. Alfonso is also he's on point. He made some salient points as well. But Moses, for the way impunity has been entrenched, so the danger for us getting the TRC implemented now, like Alfonso, took his time to dissect, is that impunity has been entrenched, and the people who actually should be prosecuted and should exit public office so that this country can move forward, unfortunately, are the ones who now are supposed to be making the decision to implement the recommendations, because the lawmakers, whether we like it or not, they were voted in by the Liberian people. But the person now, amidst all of that, there are so many different ways to get to this point, right? Like you're trying to get to uh, maybe Douala. You can either go by way of Central Monrovia, go across the Gabriel Tucker Bridge and go that way, or you can go by way of Painesville, get down to
Connellsville.
Bannersville, and still get to Douala, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so there's several ways that it can be done. Alfonso has done an excellent job of dissecting it, you, Moses, as well. But let me tell you something. We need to be serious. We need to hold our leader accountable, especially the president. The TRC report makes it crystal clear that the president of the Republic of Liberia has the responsibility, he has the judicial responsibility to implement the TRC report. Is an executive
Mandate.
mandate, is an executive job.
Yeah.
Implementing the TRC report is not the job of the legislature, it's the job of the executive. And while it is true that the legislature will play a role in terms of, supporting the process, but if the president, and this is why I keep saying all the time, is we are disappointed with Joshua. It's sad because these were people who actually campaigned all those years on the basis of accountability, implementing the TRC recommendations. I remember seeing Moba Modu and his men with caskets moving around Monrovia, casket under the sycamore tree. They were having open, wakekeeping symbolically for victims of the
But
Liberian.
let me ask you something. This tree here, the people that be talking about, an plum tree, that really sycamore tree. Sycamore tree
It's,
that were in the Bible, they planted
no,
one in Liberia.
Volcano, the sycamore tree is actually, I think, in the Middle East, but
That's what I'm saying.
it's
Yeah,
a
you know,
flowery way. It's a flowery
God
way
not
to
plant
say
sycamore tree in Liberia.
yeah. No,
With this kind
sycamore
of
tree. We don't have
The
sycamore tree.
sycamore tree.
Yeah,
We don't
man.
have
I keep
sycamore
hearing
tree in Liberia.
sycamore tree, the
Sycamore trees are
sycamore
in the
tree. I'm
Middle
wondering
East.
what River says
But
Guru is in the house, Master. He's finally in
Yeah,
the
River
house.
says, yeah, sycamore
No.
trees is in the Middle East. But the significance of calling any tree in Liberia where people congregate the sycamore tree is the significance of the tree. So
Yeah.
you have this big tree at the CDC headquarters with all these branches, and that's where people congregate. So we just termed it the sycamore tree. So you have people having open wakekeeping under the sycamore tree, uh, you know, pushing, calling for accountability. And I will tell you straight, even the current Monrovia City Mayor, Jefferson Koji actually was jailed one whole weekend for the TRC. When the report came out, he was one of the youth, volunteers who, volunteered to just advocate for
Yeah.
what. And one time, he was arrested and he was actually jailed for an entire weekend for fighting for the TRC report, this current city mayor. But then here we are, these people are in power now. So it takes the political goodwill of the president of the Republic of Liberia to start the whole ball rolling. We know very well. When the president wants to, when he sends his budget and when he wants to pass anything, it gets done, right?
Yes.
It gets done. So all the president has to do, we spoke to our international partners in the UN and all of that. They said, look, all your president has to do is to write the United Nations and say, oh, we are ready to implement the TRC or recommendations. Please come and help us do this work. After that, set up a TRC implementation unit, work along with the United Nations and get the ball rolling. That's all the president has to do.
So,
And this is
Master,
not something.
let me put this to you quick. You mentioned this president, but this president said, "Oh, M.I. Ellen was there. Who they get a report to? And I Ellen. Why Ellen did not implement? Why you putting the burden on me?" So, how do you answer that question, Madam Commissioner? Because
No,
it's
okay,
a
yes.
50-50
Actually, the president is in error. He errs when he says that.
Okay.
The
All
president
the time.
says that because there is no statute of limitation. You see, commissioners, we try to be proactive, and we try to, when we were doing this, we were thinking about the long term. We knew that the country had come from civil war, and we knew that the country was polarized on the basis of faction and all of that. So some TRCs, when they do their recommendations, they attach a time frame. Some of them will say, well, by XYZ time, within the next 5 years, the recommendation should be implemented.
Yeah.
But with us, we decided to leave it open because to kind of figure, we argue a long time. We said, look, if we attach a time frame to this, it means that these warlords, crooks, rapists, economic criminals who are now running the country, who have hijacked political power and got all the power and money, if we attach a timeline, all they got to do just wait it out. They will just wait it out like they've done now because it's been 14 years. This June 30th will make it 14 years since the TRC presented its final report. Nothing has been done because you know what? They're waiting it out. So imagine if we had attached a timeline, by now the entire TRC thing is not involved.
So, Master, come back to you. June 14. You said June 14. What year? 2014.
Of the TRC recommendations,
Was put on the text
the
of
final
Ellen
report
Johnson's
was
early
June 30th, 2009. So
2009.
yeah, the
So
final
Ellen
report,
Ellen left power 2017.
yes.
What happened there? I mean, that's the
So
case this president is making.
Ellen was a sitting president when the commission finished its work.
Mhm.
So naturally, if Ellen had a political goodwill, Ellen would have just, continued with the TRC process in terms of implementing the recommendations. But because she was named on the sanction list for her role she played in the war, the commission has said, uh, do not, disturb your first term. You're in the middle of your first term. We don't want any disruption, So after your first term, do not run again. Go into retirement. Turn the country over to other people who hands are clean. Ellie
Yeah.
saw this as a personal fight. She decided to ignore the fact and the role she played in the war. So Ellen used it as a personal fight, and she decided not to implement the recommendations. But because there is no statute of limitation for implementing the recommendation, and because there is no one person that is responsible, no one president that's responsible to implement the recommendation. So just because Ellen didn't do it, the TRC Act says the president. They use that article, the president, meaning whichever president is there at the time. If the report is not implemented, that president that is there should implement the report. So if Ellen did not implement the recommendations, then George Weah should implement the recommendations. And unfortunately, it's not happening. Mr. Weah has he's made several public pronouncements and threw out hints to suggest that he's not even going to think about it. Because I mean, the president is saying, "Oh, if Ellen didn't do it, why should I do it?" No, Mr. President, you should do it because it's part of your responsibility that you inherited. We have laws, and the TRC is one of those things that you should do. And but that's what it is. But let me just say something quickly. Alfonso mentioned civil society, and because Volcano asked a question, who are those responsible to implement the report? Where are the Liberian people with this? How can we all do this? So I will just read very quickly. The TRC Act, Article 10 on reporting and requirement recommendations. It says the TRC will present a final report to the President of the Republic of Liberia, and it says head of state. The head of state shall report to the national legislature within 3 months of receipt of the TRC report, and on a quarterly basis thereafter, the implementation of the commission recommendations, the president will give a progress report after every quarter, after every 3 months, to the national legislature as per progress that he's making towards the implementation of the report. And then here it says that the Independent National Human Rights Commission shall be seized with the responsibility to ensure that all the recommendations contained in the report of the TRC are implemented, and that civil society organizations that Alfonso was talking about and moral guarantors of the CPA, which is the Liberian people and integrated institutions like Council of Churches, the mosques, the Muslim, and all of that. And moral guarantors of the CPA shall be seized of the responsibility to monitor and campaign for the scrupulous implementation of all recommendations contained in the report. And it says here, all recommendations shall be implemented. Where the implementation of any recommendation has not been complied with, the legislature shall inquire or shall require the head of state to show cause for such non-compliance. So the law makes it clear. The law makes it clear. So honestly, the neglect of the president of the Republic of Liberia to implement the TRC report is one of the biggest stumbling block right now to having all these undesirables that are now in government and representing people. But let me just say this quickly. So civil societies, our international partners, they have been working very hard. In the last year, I wrote it down when I was thinking, okay, so a national colloquium by civil society partners was held in Bangka from May 16 to 18, 2019 on the final recommendations of the TRC. What's the way forward? How do they push the implementation of the recommendations? And this is the statement that they came out with. So this is so they came out with a whole statement, and the statement they came out with is actually reinforcing the TRC
Recommendations.
recommendations report that says the recommendations must be implemented. So they basically reinforcing that. So this colloquium was held by civil society, led by civil society of Liberia, but with all international partners, including the United Nations, Human Rights Watch, and other that. That was in 2019. 2018, I was a part of a high panel international delegation. At the time, the United States ambassador for war crime, Ambassador Stevie Rapp, and me were on the same delegation from here. We went. This is okay. And this was the advocate for Human Rights Watch, Civitas Maxima, the Global Justice and Peace Commission, the ACAN Group, and all these international organizations with Liberian civil society organization. We came together. This was November 8th, 2018. We came together and we had an intense roundtable discussion. The title was Pursuing Justice for Past Crimes in Liberia. And we sat down and we discussed what's the way forward, what's the stumbling block, what's going on. We invited the government of Liberia. I personally made sure that they sent an invitation to the president's office, sent an invitation to City Hall, and nobody from the government came. The government did not send a representation. The president, we did not hear from him. This was 2018. So, and then also, we have a TRC, pro-TRC and accountability group in the legislature led by Honorable Rastolin Swakoko Dennis. She had been working hard over the past 4 or 5 years to push for the implementation of the TRC report recommendations through legislation. So Representative Swakoko Dennis and her team were able to, in October of 2019, they were able to gather at least, we have 73 representatives, right, in the House of Parliament. Representative Swakoko Dennis, only to her hard work and commitment, they were able to get 51 signatures. Imagine, out of 73 legislature, they were able to get 51 legislatures to sign the bill that is calling for the full implementation of the TRC recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay? And so we have members of the House of Representatives, 51% of them signed it. And when they signed it, Representative Swakoko Dennis presented it to the speaker, this Buffer Chima, Jala Laman, aka Buffer Chima. They presented the draft bill to him with the signatures of 51 representatives. So they needed a two-thirds, they had a two-thirds, okay, for the establishment of the War Crimes Court. They have more than a two-thirds because you got 73 representatives and you have 51 have already signed.
You already got majority. Yeah.
Got majority. So, however, when they gave it to the speaker so that he would put it on the agenda, so that it would come on the floor for them to discuss it and endorse it, he refused to put it on the agenda. He refused to have it come on the floor. So Representative Dennis and her people tried to work back and then back and forth. And then all of a sudden, guess what? The whole document disappeared.
Wow.
My dear colleagues, the entire document disappeared. So all that painstaking work that they did to try to convince their colleagues to get they got people's signature, they got the signature.
But Masa, that would be preposterous to even say that the document disappeared.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think.
But wouldn't they keep a copy?
Yeah, but this speaker of the House of Representatives, who is actually one of those who is impeding the progress of Liberia, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
I want to hear me say this.
He's a contributor.
This speaker of the House of Representatives actually said in Parliament, he made a statement and said he cannot find the document. The document has lost. He cannot find the document. And they're everywhere looking for the document. And in between, other things happening and all of that. So that whole process right now is at a stalemate.
Let me just remind folks quickly that we're opening the line. The line is now open 404-272-2808. We'd like to hear from you, the Liberian people. Rather than sit behind the curtains and not say a word here tonight. This conversation is critical to the future of our country. Some of us sitting in this chair now, we already given up. We ain't got much again. So we want to have this kind of conversation so that it can serve as the basis for the generations yet to to come. And what we're seeing here, the TRC that had some painstaking work to do over the years. They put a document together. They made recommendations based on their findings, how our country could reconcile, could remove itself from its dark past and project into the future. Document with great recommendations for those people, institutions who are responsible for the conflict in the country, so that something could be done. Unfortunately, two presidents now in succession. Let me just call it just who I come to you from an 8123 number. Two presidents now in succession have done nothing about the implementation of the TRC recommendations. Now, if these recommendations were put into action today, do we believe that they will, the recommendations will have an impact, consequential impact on the outcome of our elections, especially as we see what we have to deal with? We have a president who has already declared that he's won. We have oppositions who themselves are not together. We have warlords who are, under the table supporting this current regime because they want to continue in their positions. So many things are happening here. So just so you guys can know, it's time to talk. So let me uh put you in queue. Rivers says Pro, I'm going to put you in queue. Okay. I'll put you in queue and come to the caller who I had on hold. Uh, the caller from Pennsylvania. Are you still there? The caller from Pennsylvania. Welcome to the issues room. I know you've been following the conversation. What's your contribution? Let's do it within 2 minutes. Thank you.
We are not hearing the caller.
You're not hearing?
No.
Hold on, hold 1 second here. Let me see what's happening. Quick. Let me just see. I don't know. Okay, let's get this taken care of quick. Go ahead, speak. Let me see.
Still not coming through.
Not hearing the. Oh
No.
gosh.
Is the person speaking?
All right, so we're going back to those old days, the dark days.
Yeah.
No. I trying to figure out what's happening here. Just give me a second, quick. Let me see. I thought I had all of this.
That's electronics, my man.
So all right, you're good to go. Go ahead.
All right, good. I mean, I want to thank you and
Got
for
him?
taking my call.
Are you
Yeah.
hearing the caller?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, caller. You
Oh
good?
yeah, yeah, great. So, I mean, I want to thank the commissioner, Madam Martha Washington. I want to thank her for her job. But I have a question, probably in one question in two phases. Uh, I want to ask the commissioner. My disappointment started with the selection of the commissioners, and because during the hearing, you could see most of the witnesses were pointing fingers at the commissioners for their role play in a conflict. I want to ask the commissioner whether she see that as a problem or does that undermine the commission work, where the witnesses will be directing, accusing the very commissioners of taking part in the conflict. I mean, the second question is that do you have any hope that this TRC will be implemented in any time? Either it will be 100 years or whatever. Do you have any hope that this TRC will be implemented?
Thank you.
That's just my question.
All right, Master, please put his two questions in queue. Let me go to Rivers Pro, who is out there in Wisconsin. Rivers Pro, are you still there?
Yeah, yes, I'm here.
All right, my man, it's good to have you, man. Masa been missing you. The first
I,
person she asked for you.
I know, Sis Massa. Oh, yeah. No, the people like Sis Massa, when we see you around, it remind us about real journalists and that. Not the thing your people go over there now, just wearing pants, they got little small back. And say, but anyway,
They ain't got microphone that successfully didn't use you.
I'm telling you, man, back then, when you
Yeah,
listen
man, make it a big fight for our men.
when you listen to or Panico Rico, those great people, man. Man, look, we miss those days. Man. I don't know what's going on in your country right now. But anyway, before I finish this matter, man, Thomas, I want us to know when Thomas said why I keep going back to the past. The past is our heritage. It is the past that got us into this today, Thomas. When I was growing up, my father never worked in government, but I lived a better life. I went to some of the best schools in town. I did not even care whether people came from America because I was living a good life. I have a quite born water. I have 24-hour electricity. When Ellen had not brought that war, we were not going to be what we are today. So when we're talking this thing, I hope you guys don't see this as an anti-Ellen thing. And you guys, why you keep going back to the past? Yes, I have to go back to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf because the father says, Martha said, this woman refused to even implement what she's doing because she was part of the process. It should be something that should worry you. We went through the war with devastating consequences. I'm not just going after Ellen because I feel it. Instead of dragging everything at the feet of George Volcano, just said two presidents in concession. They refused. They refused to go after him. But you are saying, oh, the president, yeah. So says Massa, one thing that I want to thank you very much for what you did. But the last time when you went in that to that case in France, something came to my mind. That guy that the prosecutor over there says, Massa, I would have never known that guy if it wasn't for you. Then the question comes is, who is this guy? Like there are big guns like Ellen, like the Euro, like those people that we know that were involved in the war. Yeah, right in Liberia over the working government. But then with this guy over there, I don't know how to call him in front. And so it brings to my question is, do you think the reluctance on the side of the international community to support the process that they have noticed that the process is not going to be implemented in Liberia? So they have decided to take upon their own matter, like you see the American government just established this justice and they say, you know what, we will go after this war in our own country because we know that it will not work in Liberia. Switzerland establishing, France prosecuted that guy, and other European countries are doing. So do you think that they know that this process will not work in Liberia, so they are taking on their own initiative to prosecute warlord in the Liberia country? That's my question. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Roses Pro. 3 questions to you, Masa. The one that had to do with, the witnesses accusing some of you, the commissioners, of your own participation in the war, and also, whether you think in 100 years the implementation of the TRC will ever take place, and the latter from Rivers Pro.
Very good questions. Thank you so much to the callers for those questions. I think the questions are very good. It's good that these questions are being asked so that when we provide answers and clarification to these questions, it also serves as an educational and information or resource for other people who have similar questions or who were thinking similarly. So I really appreciate the questions. So the first question the brother asked was, as some of the hearings were going on, I can say specifically he is right because specifically at the hearings in the Morovia at the Satana Pavilion, there were at least 2 or 3 witnesses who came and accused of mainly, one of the commissioners for recruiting them, say, oh, Papi, you don't remember us, you are one of our recruiters and all of that. And so, and the witness asked that question against
the Moja recruiter.
No, that's not. So the witness asked. I'm trying not to.
I'm just playing. That's
yeah. So the witness asked that question. I think he asked that question against the background of how were commissioners selected? How did this happen? That people were sitting on the commission, questioning people about their role in these things when people are accusing you of the same things that you're questioning it for. So let me just say to him, commissioners had nothing to do with the vetting process. The vetting process was strictly done. The international community headed the vetting process, but they had different category of individuals and institutions involved. Like, for example, the UNDP headed the vetting process. The U.S. Embassy was involved. 2 members of civil society were there. 2 members of political parties. Civil society was represented in the vetting process. political party had a representative on the vetting process. Women's group of Liberia had a representative on the vetting process, and the youth group of Liberia had a representative on the vetting process, and also the Liberian coalition of how you call it, interfaith, the interfaith uh, mediation also
Mediation
had a
committee,
member.
yeah.
Yes, also had a member on the vetting process. Then headed by ECOWAS had a member of the vetting process, UNDP, the AU, and also the UN. So they did it this way so that Liberians can establish ownership of the process. So even though they monitor the process, but they wanted Liberians to establish ownership of the process. So now you have all these different Liberian groups, basically integrity groups that have the representatives on this vetting process who actually vetted commissioners. So there was an open vetting process. They put out public bulletins for what they were looking for in a commissioner. For example, a commissioner at least had to be a college graduate, at least to be able to read and write, because it was complex. We had to deal with the law and all of that. So you had to be at least a college graduate, or at least your life work was the equivalent. And then also you had to be someone who had no role in the persecution of people, whether you hurt people, whether you pointed people out, whether you fought the war, whether you were, supporter. You had to have no role in anything that happened. And you were not allowed to be a part of any of the groups, meaning that you are not sympathetic to any of the group and you are not part of the group. And then they said, if you are a member of any political party, if you are vetted on the TRC, you immediately, may fold the
Resign,
paper
yeah.
and distance yourself from your political party. After the TRC process, you are welcome to go back to your political party. So it was I think the vetting process was a painstaking process. Now, it was honestly, the brother asked the question, how was it for commissioners? Honestly, it was embarrassing, I will tell you. It was embarrassing to be sitting on the commission, and then people are accusing, one of your colleagues of being compromised. So what we did was we did an internal investigation. We had a magistrate. We had a magistrate who was also vetted and worked with the commission. And so once the accusation came out, we did our own internal investigation and stuff. And this is why one of the recommendations in the TRC report is to have further investigation into the individual commissioner. It's in the TRC report. So it's one of the recommendations. So the TRC recommendations is not only for war crimes code, economic crime, it's for all sort of things. So because the TRC was an integrity commission and people came out with this allegation, and we were not in the position to fully and in-depth launch this kind of investigation that we needed on our colleague. We didn't have the authority. So we have recommended in the TRC for further investigation of certain individuals and stuff. And this commissioner is mentioned in the TRC report to be investigated. So they may be telling the truth, they may be lying. When we tried to do our own preliminary in-house investigation, it was inconclusive. And we have so much work to do. It would have just sucked up our time and distract us. So we said, in all fairness, we're going to put this in a recommendation because we want people to know that the TRC was a serious commission. We were serious. So people are not going to accuse one of us and then we can't do anything about it, but then we want to do something about other people. So if you look in the TRC recommendations, one of the recommendations there is to further investigate this allegation that a TRC commissioner or some TRC commissioners had a hand in the war. It's part of the recommendation.
If you found that to be true, what do? You extrapolate the components that they've.
No, that is not with us. Now we done with it. It would be left with the people who are implementing the recommendations. It would be left with them. So if they find out, if they conduct thorough investigation and they find out indeed that these people were compromised, one, we don't know how they got on the commission. All of us inherited each other. We were all vetted there. So we didn't have the authority over anybody. We were all vetted. Okay, it was a situation of consternation for us because we're all vetted there. So when they start to implement their recommendations and they decide that they want to be meticulous and do due diligence to the recommendations, if they investigate this individual or the individuals and they found out that yes, indeed, the witnesses were right, that this person did help to recruit people, and they did that person, the recommendation says, uh, whatever accountability measure that is being recommended for other people who are equally situated should also be applied to that person or those commissioners if it happens that way. Okay, so
Anything in that document, again, that's why I asked the question. Anything in that document, because then it gives this credibility to the person's contribution to what the report is, right? Because if I've worked and I was already compromised, and but I went through the loopholes and was not caught, and then during the implementation process, here am I now. They say Volcano was a stalwart of the National Patriotic Front and blah 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 blah. But here we've gathered information, we've worked together, I proffer ideas, I help to formulate what this report is. Will my work be taken out? That's the
no,
question.
no, 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 Volcano.
Okay, I'm
Thinking,
just
you thinking too deep. You give yourself headache.
because then
It's
everything
because
should be
Volcano.
discredited.
This was a work of an entire commission. You
Okay,
had 6 commissioners.
all right.
You had 6 commissioners. You had 3 international or advisors called ATAC, one from the UN, one from the AU, and one from the EU. And then you had a host of executive directors and secretarial staff. Then you have specialized professionals like the historic, like the historic committee, the lawyers. Then you have lawyers who were looking at war crimes, the definition of war crime. So you have all these different. It was a huge, big project. So you have all these different category of professionals coming together, more than 500 persons coming together to do this, and then you're going to discount the work for just one bad apple who was found in the midst? No. It's like,
Okay, I
yeah.
mean, somebody will be
But,
thinking deep like me. Moses?
yeah, and if I could just say something on that quickly, when the institution is defined as integrity institution, it means the institution is above reproach. So to have one person in that institution that has quote unquote questionable character, it has some implication on whatever the commission or whatever the institution does. Because now the question that comes is, who are you to question me when you yourself have titled characters? You see?
But
So
Moses,
I think that's a problem that maybe some people. But hey, Masai, honestly speaking, you guys did a remarkable job.
yeah, but let's
Well,
just say
I'm sure Alfonso can agree.
If I may
yeah,
comment
but
a little,
let's not distract
yeah.
from the bigger picture,
If I
because
may
the way
comment
that
a little on
Let's
that
just hear
issue,
from let's
Yeah, go
just
yeah,
ahead,
if
go
I may
ahead.
Alfonso.
comment a little on that issue.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
yeah. I think yes, I agree with Masa. We're thinking too deep because my understanding of the work of the TRC is that no one commissioner was responsible entirely for any part of the commission's investigation or report. So, for example, Alfonso, as a commissioner, was not the one who went to Bapolu, did all the investigation, heard everybody, wrote the report, and said Moses and Volcano were the one who did this thing in Bapolu, etc., and came up. Everything, even when commissioners went on their own and did investigations, if they did, was vetted by everybody else and agreed upon by all of the commissioners, but also by the advisors and the technical people who worked with them. So even if one commissioner might have participated as a recruiter or whatever in any other thing, the fact that whatever work he did was not done by, I keep saying he or she did, I don't know who this person is, he or she did, it wasn't done just by themselves, and two, it was vetted by everybody. It now becomes the commission's report and not that individual commissioner's report. Well, there be public perception about the credibility of the commission? Obviously there will be, but we don't even know whether those allegations that were made by the witnesses are even true. I No, I've heard some witnesses who've gone to the commission and actually made false accusations about other commissioners as well. So the fact that this one or two witnesses might have come and say, "Oh, Pape, you recruited us, you don't remember," doesn't necessarily mean that the Pape actually recruited. And I think some people went to the commission to undermine the
Yeah,
credibility.
Yeah,
to create
yeah,
subterfuge.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think we should take that into consideration as
right.
well.
Exactly. And let me just thank you, Alfonso. Let me just Volcano, just maybe 2 seconds. Exactly as Alfonso saying, at a point in time, don't forget now, we are investigating vicious warlord, but people now who have political power and economic power, they have consolidated themselves. So while our processes were going on, warlords were giving interviews and all of that. And then some of them who came to the commission, what they tried to do was to throw a monkey wrench in the process and to make the process
Less
laughing stock.
credible. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of them, when you ask them tough questions, and then they will say to you, "Oh, you're supposed to know, and you were there. You were on the battlefront with me." Those kind of foolish
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
understand? So those were some of the things that were happening. And this was in the public. You had internationals covering this thing, international journalists, and then you ask somebody a question, and the thing you're asking them a tough question, and they say, "But Master Washington, and you were a journalist." Like for example, one of the commissioner who was a journalist, when he asked certain question to one of the warlords, and the warlord said, "Well, you're supposed to know you are a journalist. You helped me to cover the fall of Banga, and you were there." Can you imagine? And we all know that this is a lie. This journalist was a journalist. He covered the war. He had nothing to do with your warring faction. He reported on your warring faction, but because they tried to be smart, they tried to be cheeky. So that's what they were doing. And this is why it is very important for accountability, because these guys have no remorse.
Yeah.
Someone that came to the TRC, couple of them cussed me out because I was asking tough questions. Couple of them cussed me out. In fact, one of them told me that I was not peaceful. I didn't want peace, and they were making all sort of crazy claims. But the reason we put this recommendation there was because we wanted transparency and fairness of the process. Okay, so if young boys come and say, "Well, Pape, why are you acting like you don't know us? You are one of our recruiters." Uh, we wanted Liberian people to know that because we were an integrity commission, so we want to operate within the utmost integrity. So that's why we put it there. But like Alfonso said, we hope that we'll have time to do the investigation. It may be true, it may not be true, but whatever it is, however way it comes out, it has actually
No bearing.
serious bearing on the work of the commission, because I mean, if you look at the TRC report, we had people like Dr. The late Joseph Guana, Dr. Dunn. We had international human rights individuals, Stephen Ellis, all the different people. We had Robin White, Kwame Clement, all these different people taking part in the process. So it is impossible for the process to have been 100% foolproof, but also it was impossible for it not to have had the kind of credibility.
Thank you. Thank you. Listen, we have 15 more minutes to go. We're leaving here at 9 o'clock. So it brings us now to the importance of this conversation. And what I say importance, we've covered a lot of the key issues here. But these recommendations you mentioned in the economic arena, in the political arena, institutional, and all of that. If Masa and you, Alfonso, from a legal mind, we have our elections just around the corner, and we see the same people continue to, and I use the word reverberate because they're just bouncing and it's causing a clamor, a loud noise. And if we see these people continue to go after our country's resources, our country's power, so that they can be in a place of comfort, what does it do for the future generation? Because I think a lot of us here can agree that we've thrown ourselves 50 years back, and it would take us another 50 years to recover. Had we been serious, we could have done that since Ellens to now. Which Rwanda has done, and we see the Gambia, who just started the process and they're taking root. But we have just been so supine about the whole process, and it's embarrassing because a lot of us who may have the voice and the power to commit to this process are in the diaspora. The people on the grounds see us like we're the ones who bringing the suffering on them. The people see us as the outsider. And instead of seeing us as the people who want to see well for them, because it's not to be unfortunate in the way I want to put it, but a lot of us may not even have to go back to Liberia. But what happens to the country itself? What happens to the country itself? And what happens to the people who are there? So this is where it's hard to explain how our people continue to do the same thing over and over and over, go to the polls and stand in line in the sun and in the rain and put people to have more food, more bread, more vehicle, more concubines, more wealth, more resources, but it leave them cold, hard, and dry. The community you can see is in bad shape, their own livelihood, there's nothing. And so, ladies, gentlemen, where do we go come 2023, October 10, if the TRC recommendations remain on the back burner?
So I believe, and Massa, if I may have the liberty to go to go first. So I believe very strongly that that recommendations of the TRC or anything along those lines would not be implemented before the next elections and might never get implemented by this administration. This administration is in bed with the warlords. It thinks its political survival depends on the warlords and the criminals. But somebody was saying, well, Ellen didn't do it, so that's why we I didn't do it. Why should I do it when Ellen didn't do it? She's the one who the recommendations were given to. Well, not only that you run on the platform that you would do it, and that's one of the reasons why the Liberian people elected you. It is also, and as I said earlier, your responsibility, your legal responsibility as president of Liberia to do, because the law requires you to do it. Those two things aside, not only did you refuse to do it, you're actually in bed with the warlords. Prince Johnson gave you the elections and you are protecting him and other warlords. So that's where President we are. It's extremely culpable and responsible. Now let's go to how we implement this thing. And I'll be very brief. I was talking to an international friend here the other day who works in human rights. And one of the questions he asked me was, Alfonso, why don't you guys or people in Liberia sue these people in civil courts in Liberia? For if a child saw Prince Johnson or whoever killing in their mother or father or whatever, go and sue him in court, drag him in the court process, embarrass him, so he has to go to court. Now, would the judge rule in the favor? Probably not. But will this man have to go to court? Will it be in the media? Would international people see that Liberians are taking actions against people who abuse them? Yes. Would that have an impact? Yes. Will it have immediate impact? Maybe not, but it creates a reverberation on the ground that says that the Liberian people are interested and are taking action. And I'm just saying that these are some of the little things that we can start doing as civil society people, as individuals who believe in this process. And jokingly, I proposed something to a friend the other day, and he was laughing. And I said, one of the things we can do, let's embarrass these people. Take a bullhorn, take posters, and one day go stand in front of Prince Johnson house or one of the other warlords' house and say, hey, we're coming for you. War crime court. Everywhere to go, war crime court. Maybe they get heart attack and fall down and die.
But in that one when Dylan said walk around cool, the man.
Exactly. So these guys are this, but I think there's a lot that we can do. Massa talk about a colloquium. The colloquium was held how many years? 2019. How many other colloquiums have followed since? These kinds of things. Let's continue to keep fire on these people's backs. Let's continue to expose and embarrass them. As you said, Volcano, Prince Johnson said, everywhere you go, Dylan said, war crime code. Imagine 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, you got about 300 people just somewhere around your house. Hey, war crime code. The people coming for you. If we embarrass these people enough, will it get us to the point? Maybe not. But these are the civil actions that have been taken in other societies in other countries that we can try, to implement. And then, of course, elections. This administration, these politicians in office, not the speaker, not all of these people who rely on the warlords to gain the power and wealth that they gain. We cannot rely on. I think we Liberian people are relying too much on the goodwill of the corrupt criminal people. Do they have any goodwill? I don't think so. So what we need to do is to force it. These elections are extremely critical for the future of Liberia. If anybody else who is not serious wins these elections and is supposed to be in office for the next 6 years, we're done. Volcano, you talk about we went back 50 years. I think we've gone back 200 years. And for time, I would stop here and let Masa and you come in.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Marcel. Let's watch the time.
Well, absolutely. Well, Alfonso, thank you for making me laugh today. Yeah, our man PYJ say why I say every time when the in section, Senator Dayton will be looking at him. Why you keep looking at me? Every time they mention war crimes code, then Dayton can get him eye. so, but anyway, on the serious note, yeah, that is one means of
and I'm cutting a letter. What we used to do react. Just bring a lot of flyers, just throw it over the fence. People come here, American people here to catch you.
Yeah, but absolutely, Alfonso, those are other ways and means to which you can affect, a positive change. And, shaming and naming, we've already named them. And we were hoping that by naming them, ahead of bringing the war crimes code, by naming them, you shame them. But apparently people got no shame. Like my stepmom used to say, all the animal in the bush lick their faces. They got no shame. They actually take you on. They actually think that you or we are the bad people. But on a serious note, Alfonso, yes, a couple of us have been discussing, a class action lawsuit like that as well. If not for anything, for the embarrassment, because don't forget, you're talking about a system that is corrupt to the core, a governance system that is corrupt to the core. So a class action lawsuit may not yield the kind of judicial result we might want, but it may yield the kind of public
awareness.
Public awareness that we will be looking for. So naming and shaming is one way to look at it. Another way to look at it too is that like I said, Liberians come out in drove for political campaigns. Somebody is running his campaign tomorrow. People come out. You have 50,000 people, 100,000 people out on the street running behind, people who want to be president, running people behind people who running campaigns. I mean, can we organize a massive demonstration just around accountability, just around the TRSU recommendation, just around encouraging our people and telling them, hey, these are the people, you tell them you don't want them in public office and you tell them to exit. So is it possible that people like us, we can work with partners on the ground, other people, to come up with a massive campaign like that and just shut down our city and send a clear message to them? So maybe, because sometimes I like to be a moderate and middle point person, but sometimes you have to change your strategy. Look at the Arab Spring. They had Arab Spring, even though I don't agree with everything about the Arab Spring, but I love the fact that the citizens were able to come out and drove. So can we inspire people to be able to really want to come out and drove, have a massive demonstration in favor of the TRSU report and shut that city down, send a clear message to President George Weah that, hey, we're tired with this thing. We want you to do something about it. If not, we'll continue doing this until you do something about this. So that's another way of massive citizen shutdown action can force the government to do something and to act positively. Another way to also is to see how we can encourage inspire and support Liberians to support people who we think again is a risk, like Volcano said. When they're not there, they campaign on the basis of accountability, they campaign on the basis of implementing the recommendations. And then when they get there, it's a different ballgame. But then again, that's a risk we got to keep taking. For now, those are some of the options. We just got to be hopefully there will be someone there, not in the far future, but in the very near future. Hopefully, we might be able to get that person who will say, you know what, I'm going to be a distinguished leader. I'm going to be a decent leader. I'm going to be that leader that will be relief to my people. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and implement the report. So we can either look for such a leader and rally around that person to make sure that person gets there, and hopefully that person will not change like a chameleon, or we can encourage our people to have a massive demonstration for the implementation of the TRC report. Because we have to do something for these people to listen to us, because they are just complacent
And take us seriously.
to take us seriously. Or we can just continue having these kinds of discussion and educating the Liberian people. But guess what? It's going to take the next 50 years if we continue. It's good to educate them, but the thing is, we need something to be done about that before the next 50 years.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maza. Thank you. Moses, any one word? Watch the time.
Yeah, I would say that the way forward first is the political will to get it done. To get a job done, you need true nationalists, people who will, put the interest of the country above the personal egos. Unfortunately for us, I'm sure the four of us on this discussion can agree. Unfortunately for us, we have people who think that their personal well-being is more important than the well-being of the country. That's what we have. I can remember several years ago when I lived in Liberia. I'm just saying this to come back to what Alfonso said earlier. Several years when I lived in Liberia, on the Johnson Street and Broad Street intersection there, we used to go there to get taxi, go Ghana's and other people, and there was this guy who was fond of coming and mixing up with passengers. And then while people, fighting over taxi, as we say in Liberia, the guy would go about snatching, people water and all of that. So the ladies who used to sell there knew him very well. So I can remember one evening we went and the taxi came and this guy came among the people and the lady yelled, she said, "Oh, we know you, oh, we know you. You're not going nowhere. You're wrong." And as she was saying, we know you, you're not going nowhere, you're wrong. And the guy turned around, went back to the woman, and he will be all with profanity. But what I'm saying here is that, such strategies do work when you shame and embarrass people. Take, for example, like Senator or Prince Johnson. Whenever he goes to the Senate, you have a group of people at the Capitol. We know you, yeah. Notorious war criminal.
And
Prince
Moses,
Johnson, we know you. Yeah.
let's just say if T comes to Robert was my brother,
Yeah.
I will wait for the perfect moment, walk straight up to Prince Johnson and slap the hell out of him. I show you
Yeah.
keep you on his side when I even fight.
Mhm.
You not say nothing.
Yeah.
You are the embarrassment.
You will
Yeah.
not press charges
You're not doing
Yeah.
nothing.
because
Zero.
you want to go to court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you shame Prince Johnson continuously, it's going to have an impact on his psyche. That will lead
Even
to
this
low
guy who's
self-esteem.
running for Senate in
Yeah.
my TV,
Yeah.
get a group of people
Yeah.
to embarrass
Yeah.
him as well.
For example, man
Throw
and
water on
Maguro,
him
right?
and eggs and say you are a criminal, get out of
Yeah.
here. These kinds of things. But I'm not encouraging
Yeah,
violence.
but what I'm saying, you have people in the community that wherever Magé goes, they also go there. And so, look, Magé, we know you. You are a rogue. You embarrass our country. We don't want you. It will get to a point that Magé will begin to feel we're embarrassed to even go into public places. That can help to change behavior.
And you think that social media will have helped.
Yeah.
That's the fear here.
Mhm.
Instead of social media helping now to bring
They are
people
promoting the bill.
to shame, instead, is promoting people. Because think about the days when there was no social media. If somebody didn't bring the gossip to you or tell you said this thing happened here, you wouldn't know.
No,
But in real time, we almost know everything that's happening, even in the Sapo rainforest. And
yes.
yet we can't take the positive out of these kinds of issues and use it to our advantage. And that is why we where we are. So, ladies
So
and
so
gentlemen,
so
this is
so
your
let me
nonprofit
just wrap it quick the volcano by
I'm
just
telling you,
saying that
Radha
yeah, that's why I'm just wrapping that. Let me just
Absolutely.
quick just say that the way forward
No.
is
Mhm.
accountability,
Okay.
the rule of law. That's all we need in that country. Anything other than that will make no progress. Let me join Volcano in saying thanks to you, Masa, Alfonso, for coming. I will look forward
What a
to see
phone
you
call.
guys for this kind of intellectual
Checking the
discussion.
schedule over here.
Yeah. Mhm. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Alfonso,
Thank
for
you.
the
Yeah.
opportunity to
Thank you,
share this
Moses. Thank
platform.
you,
Thank you.
Volcano,
Yeah.
and
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Alfonso. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Alfonso,
Thank you,
thank you. I
guys.
meant to call you. Thank you, Alfonso. You
Okay.
know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
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 Thank
All
you.
right, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Enjoy. Yeah.
So, I want to thank all of you for joining us here tonight in the Issues Room, our 122nd edition. We covered the TRC hopeful recommendations if they were to be implemented today, what impact it will have on our elections outcome. And part of what we talked about, civil society has to galvanize the press, the citizens, the religious community, the people who have been afflicted by the criminal
Mhm.
empires,
Mhm.
developed by these so-called politicians and warlords who continue to pillage the economy, take away from the people. President sitting for 49 days with 92 grand in his pocket for doing nothing. This kind of broad day corruption all over the country. How are we going to move forward? And this is the crossroad for our country when you think about 2023, October 10th. If we don't get it right, it's going to be a long haul and it's going to be the most unfortunate. And Liberia will remain in peril. So this is the opportunity, and that's why we're having this conversation. Most of our topics will be geared toward um, how we can reflect on the upcoming elections. And so we want to encourage you to join us here Tuesdays and Fridays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. By the way, we lost a prominent Liberian broadcast journalist who came out of Liberia, who has also put a sumu on me, and that was one of my mentors. We'll be broadcasting, holding a memorial service reflection for him on Friday. The name is Patrick Koluba Manjo, and I know a lot of you from the old school and from the 80s into the 90s know the name Patrick Manjo. And in fact, one of the notable programs that brought he and his colleague to prominence was the Sarah's Pat Show
Sure.
on ELBC Radio. Patrick served as Deputy Director General for Broadcasting. He was Director of Production, Director of Radio. He held so many credible positions at the Liberia Broadcasting System. So Patrick will be memorializing him this Friday. We're going to have some very, very important people in the house. Joining us is Octavius Obe, Steve Kennett, Massa Washington, Gabriel I.H. Williams, Hassan Kewu, Moses Sandy, myself, and probably if we can get Sarah's Badio in Monrovia and Sam Steve Koya. So it's going to be a full house of what I would consider a reunion, but in the same token, Moses will be celebrating this brother. So again, we're looking forward to Friday. Please share the word. We'll have the promo out between tonight and tomorrow so that we can have a great broadcast for our fallen brother. Patrick will not be forgotten in the community of journalism. In fact, one other thing I'd like to add, in 1998, when we converged in Washington, D.C., Patrick Manjo was one of the people there during the formation of the Association of Liberian Journalists in
In the
1990,
Americas, yeah.
Washington, D.C. So again, we'll be celebrating Patrick Manjo, And we just want to say that Friday, please join us so you can hear some of the good things that Patrick contributed. Some of us here today and what we do, Patrick has uh, impacted our own career in many ways. Thank you, Moses.
Thank you, Volcano.
We'll be
It was
back
a
here Friday.
pleasure. Yeah, we look forward. Thank
Yeah.
you. Enjoy your evening, my man.
Thank you.
Thank you.